Welcome to Beyond the Bell, Leading with Purpose. I'm Jim Cummins, along with my partner Nathan Manley. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Pam Hedgpeth to the podcast. Dr. Hedgpeth is a highly respected leader in Missouri public education, having previously served as superintendent of the Republic School District, where she was known for steady leadership, a focus on student success, and a deep commitment to education and community partnerships. She now serves as director of the Greater Ozarks Cooperating School Districts, supporting districts across the region through collaboration, shared services, and leadership development. In addition, Dr. Hedgpeth is a key leader in Success Ready Student Network, where she continues to champion real-world learning and competency-based education approaches. Her work reflects a clear passion for moving instruction in Missouri toward meaningful, authentic learning experiences aligned with workforce and community needs. Dr. Hedgpeth, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Well, thanks for that introduction. Wow, appreciate that. And it's my pleasure to be here on this cold, snowy day.
Nathan, what's happening in your world right now?
Well, trying to beat the cold like Dr. Hedgpeth had talked about there. So I'm looking at 8 or 9 inches outside. It looks amazing. The sun is shining, but it's definitely cold out there. The big thing is we finished up our latest leadership luncheon, where we focused on continuing to build our wisdom through our experiences and calm and compassion and those strategies. Those are always very fulfilling. How about you?
Yeah, I enjoyed that. It was good to see some of the leaders there and just bringing those biblical principles into leadership. And I appreciated what your thoughts that you shared with them and the science around listening and being engaged. It was good stuff. Well, today, as we kick this off with Dr. Hedgpeth, I think we'll just start with kind of what are you doing right now? What is your passion that continues to drive you to get up each morning and make education great in Missouri?
It is a passion. It is a calling to get to do this work. And, I could have retired years ago, but it just brings me joy to get to continue to serve leaders and teachers in our region and our state. And I think the thing that I'm most excited about right now that we're engaging our public in and our educators in is that notion of real world learning. I'm just so, thankful for that initiative that actually started over in Kansas City. And then how through, the regional work that we do with GoCSD and some support from the SRSN, we're beginning to get districts inspired about bringing more real world learning opportunities to all kids. Like we've done a lot in the past with real world learning through our CTE programs, GoCaps, and some of those efforts, but it really had not gotten down to the classroom level, all the way down to elementary and middle school. It's been more of a high school focus. And what we know about learning is that kids really are more motivated. They're more excited to come to school when you have this authentic real world experience for them to engage in.
Mm. So Pam, I'm wondering, with the Success Ready and real world learning, as you've gone through this work as a facilitator, what have you learned about leading change toward competency-based learning at the system level?
Well, there's lots of barriers, right? But there's also lots of hope around the work. And I think that's another reason that I stay with the work, because once a teacher and a building principal and a superintendent become motivated by the work and see what it can do to really help deeper learning happen in our classrooms, people get really excited about being an educator again. They get fired up about the work that they get to do. And so just seeing those light bulbs come on for usually it starts with district leaders. You kind of see them get excited about it. And then knowing that maybe some work that you've done have inspired them to do some changes within their system. Yeah, that's just really great work. but it's hard work too, right? And you have to be very transparent with leaders as you're working with them that it is hard, but that at the same time, you probably have some of this work already in place in your district. And just being very strategic and identifying what you've already got in place and just building on that, celebrating what you have, and then building new ideas and new strategies based on the great work you're already doing. And we've got districts that joined us that were just at the very beginning of thinking about moving their districts that direction. And then we've got some very sophisticated districts in our network that provide some models and some guidance for other districts to see where this work could go. So it's just about knowing where you are as a leader and just celebrating the wins and then building on those positive attributes to move the work forward.
Yeah, I would ask this question for superintendents out there that are listening. I was honored to do some work with the SRSN last year and to try to support this work. And one of the challenges I ran into, not with business leaders and not with outside organizations, but sometimes with internal leaders, is how do you measure what we know is the right work versus what DESE continues to measure through the APR and some of those more traditional models that they've used. So superintendents or building leaders that are out there listening, what what encouragement can you give them that we can still move to that type of work without jeopardizing APR and what could become the A through F system?
Well, this has been my contention forever. I always have felt like the SRSN work, the competency-based learning work, was about deep learning, right? It's about the science of helping kids have a deep understanding of learning through application. Because we know, you have this surface learning you do, background, got to create the background, which a lot of times we do in a traditional approach. But then to really get it to stick for kids, they got to be able to make connections with their learning to authentic learning, to real world, to life opportunities, and to previous learning. And so those connections that we're able to make with the real world learning and the competency-based approach makes the learning stick. And so the reason I say that is my contention is when you do competency-based learning really well and you bring in real world learning with that, you're actually going to see an increase in test scores if that's what we're chasing. And it seems to me like our state still wants us to chase that. So, we want learning. That's our deep commitment, but we want it to be deep, not just a surface learning.
Dr. Hedgpeth, you'd mentioned, and Jim talked about, retired, very successful educator, and yet you're still doing this work. You've got this passion that you don't like. You don't have to do this. You could just walk away and be a grandma or whatever you want to be. What's what keeps you going with this? What brings out so much passion when we talk about competency-based learning or the SRSN or the work that you're involved now?
Well, it's the faces of the kids. I always think about my own grandkids, just how their little eyes lighten up and brighten up when they're doing something that they see the reason they're doing it and they have fun doing it. So it's really about like when you visit schools and you see some of these classrooms in action and you see the faces of the kids and the motivation of the teachers. That's what you're after, right? You're really about that student, like the light bulb moments. Things are coming to connection for them, and they're, so excited about being at school. And I'm talking middle schoolers and high schoolers too. That's, I feel like how we keep them engaged and help them to have some voice in the learning that they're doing. And so it's really about like seeing kids continue to grow. And what I would say to folks that are close to retirement or, even those young whippersnapper educators, I think there's just like I used to teach at SBU, I did their doctorate courses. And, some students would say, well, what can we get you? You were such a great as far as a gift that I had helped them maybe with their dissertation or whatever. I'm like, you know what? I don't want a gift. The best gift you can give me is to pay it forward, like invest in others and pay it forward. And I've had people come back and say, I'm remembering what you told me, and they're paying it forward. And I just feel like if we have that mindset as educators that we just keep paying it forward, it's just a blessing. It just fills your heart and it just makes you think, this is the work that I'm supposed to do in this world. And as long as I can still do it, I want to keep doing it.
That's good.
That's good stuff. And it makes me think about, you know, you mentioned that, or Nathan mentioned that you're doing this in retirement because it's still passionate. That's kind of what I'm in that situation now when you're retired, you can do the things you're passionate about. So let's think back to your days at Republic where you weren't retired and you were in the grind and you had to do some things that weren't as much in your passionate wheelhouse. So those leaders that today are in the grind, what advice, maybe some things you learned from leaders when you were growing up, or what advice now would you pass on to them, not only about finding the joy in their job, but how do they balance the stress of the job with home life and wanting to live a fulfilled life? That's a lot in one question, but
Yeah, and there's kind of a couple of things that come to mind when you say that. So before I talk about the home life thing, because being a female superintendent has kind of its unique challenges sometimes, especially if your husband is a basketball coach and is gone at night a lot as well. So kind of working through that, I'll talk about that initially or here in just a minute. But initially, you know what? One thing that I learned that was so powerful is like surround yourself with really good people. And I'm not just talking internally, I'm talking externally too. So as soon as I became a superintendent, I identified what I thought were like 6 or 7 of the best superintendents in Southwest Missouri. And so I went and spent a day with each one of them. People like Steve Kleinsmith, Doug Hyder, Ron Langford. I mean, just the best superintendents in the region. And they invested in me then because I reached out to them. I spent the day with them. I asked them a lot of questions, really wanted to be a learner. And then I feel like they continue to invest in me. And so I just had this great network of support with other superintendents that I could call on budget questions or parent questions. And you know what? We just were tight. We just could ask anything of each other and provided that really great support. So if you don't have that network, I suggest get one. Pick the very best people and surround yourself with those people and learn from them. And then on the other side, as far as like the balance piece, I'm going to be honest, I wasn't very good at that. I really did sometimes let the work get the best of me. And so you just have to set boundaries. And I think I've learned this maybe from my daughters now about how you set boundaries about the work and just make sure when you're home and when you're with your family, you're present. Like let the work go and be present right then with your kids and your grandkids if you're that age. But those of you that have little kids, when you're home, be present. They're going to remember this time with you and you'll never get it back. So find the time, set the boundaries that when I'm home, that's home time.
I think one of the things that come to my mind when you say that is um, I heard somebody, it hasn't been that long ago. I can't believe I was nearly 60 when I heard this, but they said, be where your feet are. And it really kind of drove home to me. Yeah, that means your mind needs to be where your feet are in the moment, enjoying that. Now that I have grandkids, and I probably cheated my own kids of that sometimes, but I'm not letting it happen with the grandkids.
Amen to that. Amen to that. The other thing, kind of in that same like wellness way of thinking, you get so busy as a superintendent, and sometimes you forget about your spiritual side. right? You're so focused on, you got your family, you got your job, and then you let like your spiritual well-being. And I would kind of put like fitness in that realm too. Like you gotta at least get out and walk. You gotta do something to get the stress off. And then I always found like praying and just kind of being reflective in that regard. And you can multitask. I can pray and walk at the same time. And that seemed to really when I would do that and I'd be intentional about that, I was able to solve the problems that I was facing each day in a much more efficient, effective way. I don't know about efficient, but effective way because I had peace about me. And I just, had that guidance to make sure that I was making the right decisions. And then I'd have a really bad day and I'd reflect on it and I'd think, well, I didn't pray today. So that's why I probably have had a bad day.
I think that's really good. I really appreciate you sharing that piece. I know for Jim and I think that's an understanding of like really that's where we should start functioning from and let everything else be a part of that. We've been chosen for this position and understanding that that's part of the responsibility, and ultimately others are going to look at us by the fruit that we produce. And if we're out there and we've been appointed to this, am I in a place where I'm able to produce good fruit? And how's my soil? Or am I in the thorns? Am I in those pieces? And so I think, Dr. Hedgepeth, knowing you for a few years now, and that blessing to be able to learn from you is there's always this consistency in like you producing good fruit, and you can just see that at a deep level, and we need as many leaders and educators as we can possibly have out there that will produce that fruit. So appreciate that very much.
Well, that's very kind. And kind of to that point about producing fruit, I think we always need to be planting seeds too.
Mm.
Like always, like and looking at other people, and sometimes they don't see that they have that leadership ability in themselves, and just planting a seed for them to think about. Have you ever thought about being a leader at some level in your district? Because you really do have those qualities. And I can just think of so many people over the years that I've just made that simple comment, or I've sent them to a professional learning piece that I thought would really resonate with them, and how that seed planted and became a much greater widespread production of fruit besides just that individual. They actually turned around a building, or they, were really strong in that role as superintendent. I was so blessed at SBU to have so many great students that are now superintendents or assistant superintendents. And I'm just amazed by the things they're able to do.
It's funny that the after you had approached me about the SRSN work, and I was sharing with somebody, I said, somebody said, you can't say no to Pam. And so I think that goes to a little bit of the impact that you've had and the fruit that you've created. People know your heart, know the work you're doing, and when you ask people to do something, they're responsive because they want to be part of that.
Hey, well, I'll add to that specifically. I mean, certainly a leadership quality overall for others to reflect on, but seeing it in Pam as well as, producing the good fruit and being the encourager that she is and rallying others. I mean, uh, obviously she's got a team, but the statewide effort. And it's sometimes though the gift that she also has in challenging thinking and challenging others. It's not just cheerleading and pom poms and all those things are going to be great. No, it's sometimes it's it's deeper than that. I've been on the receiving end of that a bit, and I was very grateful for it. Of like, I need you to step up. I need you to talk. I need you to be a part of this group. And like, not everybody does that. They may push somebody off the side, like, well, they're not going to contribute, or handle it a different way. So I think that's both of you do that very well, but I don't think it can be overlooked.
That's funny, Nathan. I actually remember that, right? I remember. It's like, Nathan, we need to hear your voice. Come on, step
Well,
up.
I'm
It's
going to tell you, I needed it too. If like, Jim's good at throughout my career. I always want to be a listener and those things, but sometimes, yeah, there's this constant battle between courage and cowardice, right? No matter the level. And so, yeah, sometimes the easiest thing is just to sit there and let everybody else figure it out, or sit there and say, I don't want to deal with these conversations. And so when you have people in your life like a Jim or a Pam that like, hey, you've got something to share. I need you to share it. It's important. It's scary, but it's necessary. And being able to take that lesson to others, I think I'll always be grateful for that from both of you.
well, that's very kind. I'm thinking about some of the folks that that I can think about that have really grown as leaders. They started kind of quiet, right? And probably reflective. They were very reflective leaders, and they didn't realize that they really had some good ideas or some good practices that other people need to hear about. And I think that's was a power of the network of the SRSN and really Go CSD too, is, finding those districts and those leaders that are doing really good work and elevating that and letting others see that as a model of work. I think is another really good strategy. I mean, you can do that in the building level. You can do that, as district by district level. Like we do that a lot in Go CSD. We'll showcase districts so that others can see, what it looks like. Because it's hard sometimes to shift practice if you haven't seen it. And so we always take our leaders on field trips. We did a couple of out of state, and then we've done several in state too, just so they can see what it looks like. And so kind of a springboard off of what we were talking about. There's people out there that need to be sharing, and there's districts out there that we need to go see what they're doing and have them share their practice, because that's how we grow, all those different ways.
I want to ask you a question here because I think Nathan and I felt a sense of urgency. One, because superintendent tenures are not typically long. So when you think there's a path forward and you need to try to attack it, um, there is that sense of urgency. But at the same time, you have to deal with sustainability. So as you've led both districts and now a movement, I would call it a movement to different kind of thinking. What advice do you give that leader, that superintendent, or building, any leader that's trying to make change? How do you balance urgency with a deliberate approach that maintains or creates a sustainable system?
Well, it's a balance, right? You've got to know when to put the pedal to the metal and when to lift up. And so you've got to really, and this is so common thinking, but it really kind of starts with the culture, right? You got to have um, these relationships with people that they trust you to begin with, right? If you're pushing whether a change in your district or at a statewide effort, you got to have a little bit of a trust factor. That sometimes takes a little bit of time to build. But at the same time, you've usually got in if you've been around long enough, like I have, you've got some early adopters you know about. You've got those change agent thinkers out there. And so tapping those people early, I think, one reason that SRSN started so well and was kicked off so well is because we had the right people in that first cohort. And I know you guys were part of that, right? We kind of found those people that were early adopters. And with that, they got together, all these different districts that were kind of early adopters, and then that synergy they created, I think made the movement happen because we got the right people in the room with a common way of thinking that we're all innovators and planted some seeds, and they just took it and ran with it. So I think that can happen at a building level, at a district level, or at a state level. Get those early adopters, build that great trust with them, build some background knowledge with them, and then just kind of let them help take it forward.
Well, and I think um, Dr. Hedgepeth mentioned it, and I would say something to consider or make sure that we reiterate there. I sometimes when we talk about real world learning and everything that goes along with that or project-based learning, I never feel like when I just talk about it, I can give it the credence that it deserves. And so you mentioned going around from districts to districts, and I always knew, and Jim, we would have different people come visit our district or classrooms, and you kind of wondered what they would get out of it. But as soon as you see the way the kids are learning, the way they're engaging with everything, you're like, oh, that's what I needed them to see, and they're gonna figure it out from that point on, and seeing those that like that's the reason why we're here.
That
Oh,
reminds me, we took a group to Pattonville. I think that was really like a turnaround in thinking in Southwest Missouri. We probably took 30, maybe maybe 50 people to Pattonville. And the way those kids could talk about their learning, like they brought them in the hall, like a couple of kids at a time, and they would talk to these educators about where they were with their learning and where they needed to go. And these educators from Southwest Missouri are like, oh my gosh, kids can talk like that. Well, our kids can do that. We just need to give them that opportunity. So right. The kids sell it. The kids love this approach. And then once you see them in action, they they just make you know if I'm not doing this for my kids, it's almost, I don't know, it's like, what am I doing then, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it.
so as we kind of wrap this up and think about your final thoughts you might want to give to education leaders that would be listening, I'm going to frame it around this question for you. What continues to give you hope about public education and educational leadership?
Just great people. Like all the leaders and teachers that I work with are just, they're good people. They're good humans, and their hearts are in the right place. And I just want educators to know the work that they do really matters. It matters. And sometimes you don't think it does, but when you've been in it a long time and you have people that you used to teach in second grade, which, they're like 40 years old now, and they're telling you how you had an impact on their life, then hey, my work did matter. And so what you're doing right now, you may not see the fruits of that for a while, but just know it's there. You are making a huge difference in the lives of kids that you probably don't even know. You don't even realize something that you've said or something that you've done that have impacted a student, or if you're a superintendent, a teacher or a principal, or even a community member. We really haven't talked about that, but you're kind of the face of your school and your community. And so those connections that you have with community leaders and with parents, you just have such an opportunity to, impact, that whole ecosystem of those different entities around your school. So just believe in yourself and believe in your work, and just know what you do matters and is making a difference.
Nathan, you got anything to add before I? There was a lot said in that last comment.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know that you can add as much as just let it speak and let it sit. And just the wisdom that Dr. Hedgepeth brings. The community piece. If you haven't listened to the episode with Dr. Schmitz from Lebanon, he talks about it a great deal, and what they're doing there with their community is pretty amazing.
He's a pretty special leader.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing great things. Yeah, so hopefully by the time this is released, maybe the weather will be warm, but on a cold day, it was great to have Dr. Hedgepeth with us, and just from me to you, I appreciate the years of service and leadership and what you've poured into others, including me and Nathan, and your continuing passion for student learning.
Well, right back at you guys. It's been a pleasure.
Well, that will do it for this episode of Beyond the Bell, Leading with Purpose. If you have leaders in your district that need support, that's what Nathan and I do. Everything from associates that work with classroom management, student engagement, to coaching and development of building leaders. It's what we are passionate about doing. So if there's anything we can do to help you, feel free to reach out. In the meantime, we encourage you to be well and keep leading with purpose.